In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, and despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
You're listening to Late Night Radio on the SHR Media Network. Caution, there will be mature themes explored and potentially adult language used. If conservatarian words, phrases, certain concepts, or rhetoric offends you, tune out now.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike?
Oh, you magnificent bastard, I read your book. I drink your milkshake.
How dare you?
I call that bold talk for a one-eyed fat man.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch! Of course you realize this means war.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
Welcome. It's Tuesday, the first day of December 1st, year of our Lord 2020. And I've come up with what I consider to be an interesting development for the Saloon. I'll get to that in just a moment. But first, I have to tell you, all of you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, always spelled with a K, a mere 2 miles east of the locus of evil on the entire left coast, the Bill Mill, the belly of the beast, the Capitol building in downtown Sacramento at 10th and L Streets, where late at night you can hear the death of common sense as its concomitant wail issues forth from that putrefying edifice. And at the end of the show, when I exit the plush, resplendent, sumptuous, and palatial, all of those things, SHR Media Studios, I'll be smelling the odoriferous stench of sulfur, brimstone, and evil emanating from that building in downtown Sacramento. I have to tell you, this show for the next 2 hours consists of my opinion and my opinion only. Opinions. And what I've come up with this. I think it works for this other guy, and I think it's going to work for me now. I declare the Saloon an autonomous zone. If Antifa and all those tards can get it in Seattle, then the Saloon, if Chaz is an autonomous zone, the Saloon can likewise be an autonomous zones. I am jam-packed with audio cuts, with great stuff to tell you about tonight. So I'm not really going to go into, again, on one search engine, Blaze. I use Blaze. I've got 30 tabs up. And if I wanted to go to, say, Chrome, I've got another 25 to 30 tabs up. And then if I want to go to Mozilla for tonight, I've got another 15 tabs up of stuff to tell you about tonight. Now, a lot of it is going to be audio. And I have been made aware of a particular cut that's about 15 minutes, maybe 10. No, I'm sorry, I think it's 9 minutes long. Of Sackhead Sean made me aware of this today. Of a hearing that occurred in Michigan. And it's someone who was working at Dominion testifying. Well, I keep telling you that I'm going to have a show about voter fraud. And then every day I have to add something, so I'm not done with the damn show yet. It will easily, at this point, create overtime. It will easily be a 2-hour show. There will not be room for anything except all these stories, all these audio cuts that I have kept and saved and archived, because that's what I do. It may end up being a 3-hour show. So that's coming. Now, Thursday night may be the last live person with me in the SHR Media studios. Because, as you know, we are losing the studios. Come January, we won't be able to be here. I am going to be moving the studio. It's going to go to another location, which I have found. And so SHR Media is not going away. It will be a challenge because now I will... I will be setting the studio up. I know what you're thinking. I can see it from here. I see the gears turning in your brainulus. And actually, you'd be right. But I'm going to bring the show. There is no choice. The house in which we're in is going to be sold sometime in January, so we have to leave. And I will keep SHR. You've heard the whole story. I'm not going to regale you with it right now. I am going to go into James O'Keefe. Just released about a 2-minute video. And he indicated news organizations have to be very careful and very responsible about not giving Donald Trump too much of a platform on his not conceding, because it looks like maybe CNN or something like that is saying that. So, Mr. O'Keefe, take it away,
CNN
if you
says
would.
On Jeff Zucker's 9 a.m. editorial conference call how they, the Democratic Party, powerful interest groups, may determine how CNN will cover Trump not conceding the presidential election.
I just want to underscore something that Michael said earlier about the transition and Trump, because I've been talking to a lot of people this morning.
Okay, this is Jamie Gangle, a special correspondent at CNN. This is a 9 a.m. call at CNN.
Both sides. And I just keep hearing the same thing, folks from Republicans who have not come out to congratulate Biden, but also to those who have in the Democrats. And that is that we have to be, news organizations have to be very careful and very responsible about not giving Trump too much of a platform on his not conceding, because they feel the transition can go forward. And, other than the national security briefings, which are critical to start now, they just don't want us to exaggerate that Trump isn't leaving office. And
okay, did you hear what she said? She said the higher-ups at CNN don't want the people at CNN to exaggerate that Trump isn't leaving the office. I find that very interesting.
I'm going to have a lot of specific reporting on that later today, but just big picture wanted to underscore what Michael had said.
Yep. Agreed.
On the issue of why it's important to get the transition going right, the 9/11 report talks about one of the problems.
Now, this is Stephanie Becker. She's a field producer at CNN. She's speaking on this 9 a.m. call at CNN.
Was that the trouble that was brewing got lost during the transition. So if you want a good concrete example of what happens when you don't have a good transition, go look at the Twin Towers.
Right, because an improper transition is just like 9/11. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So I think that's an important.
This is Jeff Zuckert.
Point. I think it was discussed a little bit yesterday in terms of national security. I think it's really important to raise again. I would encourage folks to think about, that 9/11 Commission report and the lack of transition.
Okay, so you understand what he's doing there? They, CNN, are comparing the lack of transition to 9/11. That's what they were pushing. That's what they were told to push. That's what they agreed to push. Now, with some of the other news stories that occurred today, AP came out with this. The headline is, Disputing Trump, Barr says no widespread election fraud. Now, if you read this story from AP, it says, disputing President Donald Trump's persistent baseless claims, Attorney General William Barr declared Tuesday the U.S. Justice Department has uncovered no evidence of widespread voter fraud that could change the outcome of the 2020 election. That's what's being pumped into the media right now. By the way, in chat, SHR Media chat, welcome to Simone. Welcome to Sergeant Booker. Welcome to the Alaskan and one viewer who will not be unmasked. Welcome to Jack Alexander in Facebook chat and Jimmy Collins in Facebook chat and Peter Sabatini in Facebook chat. Had to start Facebook chat because YouTube went and I haven't figured out, and Sackhead Sean hasn't figured out what the hell it means when we've run out of quota. I guess we've issued too many traffic tickets. In any event, William Barr said that the information that's coming out about this from AP is not what he said. He said if they find anything and they have all their USAs looking, if necessary, they'll file when they find something. That's an official statement. So essentially, Barr was refuting precisely what the American Media Maggots were saying. Because now what I've read and what I've heard is, now remember this, the election surrounds itself with mail-in ballots. You didn't have to ask one, you just got one. And it's funny, if we put on our thinking hats and go back to 2019, then there are articles from the New York Times saying mail-in ballots are bad. Then I think Amy Klobuchar is quoted as saying mail-in ballots are bad. And also it was, I think, Wyden who said mail-in ballots are bad. And Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren, said mail-in ballots are bad. Well, let's hearken back to what William Barr said about a month ago, or a couple of months ago. And he's talking to Wolf Blitzer, I believe, on CNN.
As far as widespread fraud, we haven't seen that since...
we haven't had the kind of widespread use of mail-in ballots that's being proposed. We've had absentee ballots from people who request them from a specific address. Now what we're talking about is mailing them to everyone on the voter list when everyone knows those voter lists are inaccurate. People who should get them don't get them, which is what has been one of the major complaints in states that have tried this in municipal elections. And people who get them are not the right people. They're people who have replaced the previous occupant, and they can make them out. And sometimes multiple ballots come to the same address with a whole several generations of occupants.
And that's been true. What I'm going to prove to you when I have my massive voter fraud show. I don't know if you guys understand. When I do SHR Media special reports, one of the primary reasons that I'll focus a special report on a solitary issue is for me and for you, and also for other people that you can refer them to any given topic. I do those so that there are permanent archives of what is said, the news stories, the audio clips, the articles, and the internet references. I do that so those things are immured on the show. The sound is still there, though YouTube, etc., may remove them subsequently in the future. And that's happened to me any number of times where I played a cut on YouTube or some kind of an article, an audio cut from another article, and then I go back and I discovered those have been excised. So that's one of the major reasons that I do that. That's one of the major reasons that I'm still going to continue, though this stuff has exploded. I'm still going to do the voter fraud show. There will be one sort of central archive for all of that stuff. And whether you listen or not, whether you listen live or whether you listen in podcast, I want there to be a location where we don't forget what really happened and what people have said and the audio cuts, because the American Media Maggots today are not journalists. There are perhaps a handful of journalists. The rest of them are in the tank for leftists and the Democrats. They're the propaganda arm of the DNC, or worse, Democrat socialists or socialists, communists of America, because that's where they want us to go. So, Mike in chat says, I thought there was no more SHR. Well, I've found a way, Mike, to keep SHR. The studio is going to move. We're going to be leaving. And then I've made arrangements for the studio to go someplace else. So, your worst nightmare, BZ's going to have to try to figure out how to make this thing move in another location. Also, Mike just jumped into chat. Good to see you there. Let's see. Alaskan in chat said, I'd love to be a fly on the wall at CNN if that happens. Let me throw something out there for you. Because it's my show, I'm jumping around all over the place. If this doesn't happen to work out right now for President Trump, and he doesn't get a second consecutive term, we know that CNN is having a terrible time. They're having a terrible time. What if Trump bought it? Does that not kind of make your brainulus go? Because it oughta. Or, I thought about this, what if he decides that he's going to throw some cash at OANN, One American News Network? Or, what if he decides that he's going to throw some cash at, Newsmax TV? There's a lot of stuff that can happen in the future. So, as I've said before, and I will continue to say, don't give up. There are still things churning and gears are turning. There are many machinations. There are a lot of irons in the fire. This may end up going once or twice to SCOTUS. Remember who SCOTUS is now. SCOTUS just slapped the shit out of Governor Cuomo in New York City on a 5-4 regarding COVID. Who was the deciding vote on that? ACB. Dun, dun, dun! If I had a producer, what you would have heard is this. You would have heard ACB. But that's not what you heard, because basically I don't have a producer. So Barr was upset with this, with just mailing ballots out. And I'd say that's completely understandable. I'm going to continue with some audio cuts. Now, yesterday, there were 11 hours of testimony from Giuliani and another person whose name I can't think of right now, and a bunch of legislators from Arizona. It went on, but I've brought you the highlights for tonight, plus another highlight from the Michigan hearings that occurred today. Arizona was yesterday. The Michigan hearings, which I bet you didn't know were going on, occurred today. And I found a great audio cut involving Dominion. Well, let's start some of these. Oh, the other thing I should point out is, did Fox cover these hearings in Arizona? No. Plus, no one else is going to. And Fox didn't either. I'll get to Fox. OAN did. One America News. So this is what they happened to acquire from yesterday. This is an election whistleblower. You want evidence? Here's evidence.
So, in total, I saw 24 gaylords, or large cardboard containers of ballots loaded into my trailer. These gaylords contain plastic trays. I call them totes, but trays will work.
This is a post office dude.
Of ballots stacked on top of each other. All the envelopes were the same size. I could see the envelopes had handwritten return addresses, and I could even tell that one was marked registered mail. That one was off to the side, all right? They were complete ballots. I didn't think much of it at the time. At Bethpage, I was first loaded with 2 tall gaylords. So picture that thing there, or this little representation here, but this tall, all right? So I was loaded.
Okay, so that's a big box. He's gesturing to a big box that's about 3.5 feet, maybe 4 feet by 4 feet. That's a big damn box.
With 2 tall gaylords, okay? And that were, where was I at? They had mixed mail pieces bound for Lancaster. These gaylords were loaded first because they would be the last off my trailer.
Okay, I should explain further. This man's name is Jesse Morgan. He is a truck driver. That means he is a subcontractor with the United States Postal Service in Pennsylvania.
The remainder of the truck was loaded with complete ballots bounded for Harrisburg. I then drove to Harrisburg with the ballots. Usually I offload in one of the 7 docks every day, but not on October 21st. I wasn't allowed to offload. That's different. Whenever I pull into Harrisburg, I go around and I get my dock and I get unloaded and then I roll out. Not that day, all right? Not that day. Instead, I was made to wait for roughly 6 hours in the yard, from 9:15 a.m. to 3 p.m. This really ticked me off, all right? Because my brother was in town. He just moved back up. And I wanted to spend some time with him. I tried to get the attention of postal workers, but no one would tell me what's going on. All of this was weird. I arrived at about the same time every day. The expediter scans all my seals and barcodes, and they unload me. But for the first time, but from the time I first arrived in Harrisburg from Bethpage, everything got weird. None of that happened. After waiting 6 hours, I went inside to figure out what's going on. I was told to wait for the transportation supervisor. This was also weird. 16 months I've been doing this. I haven't ever talked to the transportation supervisor for the United States Postal Service. I talk to an expediter. I come in, I see an expediter, that's who I deal with. If I have an issue, it's the expediter. I don't deal with anyone else but the expediter. I never talk to the United States Postal Service's transportation supervisor. Let's make that clear. I have my own transportation supervisor for the company that I work for. He's the one that gives me the details. He's the one that I listen to. I don't listen to this guy. He's the guy that would contact my boss if he needed something ran different. I've never spoken with this transportation supervisor from the United States Postal Service. They don't speak to people like me. He's a top guy. He's the kind of guy that would speak to my boss, not a trucker like me. The supervisor told me to drive to Lancaster without being unloaded in Harrisburg. This made no sense to me. I knew the ballots were loaded for Harrisburg, and that if I was to go to Lancaster, they would have to off-unload my those pallets in Lancaster to take off Lancaster stuff, to put the ballots back on the trailer, to send it back to Harrisburg. Doesn't make no sense.
These are just regular folks trying to tell us.
This was a real screw up.
What happened?
My thinking. I wanted my ticket. So whenever I go to a place, when I go there and whenever I'll leave, I'll get a ticket. I'll get a ticket, a slip, whatever you want to call it. It's the date, time that I'm supposed to be there. It'll have my trailer number on it. It'll have how much I'm loaded. It'll have the seal number. It has my name. It'll have who was the expediter. So I wanted my ticket, my slip. I call them tickets. Some people call them slips, okay? And then because I was there for 6 hours, I wanted my late slip too, because I wanted to be paid for sitting in that yard for 6 hours. So I wanted the ticket and the late slip for stopping in at Harrisburg. Also, I wanted it because if they're telling me to take this load to Lancaster, I don't want to pull up the Lancaster of Harrisburg crap and be like, yeah, they just told me to come here and not have no ticket, because they don't look like I just came straight here, you know. Just to prove that I was there. And so others would know I wasn't the person that screwed this up. A ticket is always provided to a driver when they arrive at a United States Postal Service facility. It proves you were there. The transportation supervisor refused to give me a ticket and told me to leave. I then demanded he give me a late slip, since I wanted to get paid for the time I was sitting there and waiting for them to offload me. He refused to give me that too. He was kind of rude and wouldn't explain anything to me. He just told me to go to Lancaster. I then drove to Lancaster, unhooked my trailer in its normal place, and then drove my truck to where I always park it, in a nearby lot, and then I went home. The next day, it just got weirder. As I arrived at Lancaster's United States Postal Service facility with my tractor, I went to hook up to my trailer, and my trailer was gone. Not there no more. 10R 1440. Since I started driving that Bethpage route, I've always had trailer 10R 1440. I like that trailer. It was a nice trailer. I know you guys probably don't really know nothing about truck driving or trailers or anything, but the rear tandems, if you're driving light, the rear tandems the front axle will actually go up. Nice air ride. the doors on it it worked great.
Inside baseball.
Some of the
for
trailers
trucking.
that place has, you could honestly put it on the back of a carrier and drop it off in the middle of the ocean, and no one would worry about it.
Do you see that something is already happening? Almost none of this is making sense. Almost none of this is going as per normal. I'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, are you guys listening? This is Shannon from Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media. I know you've been wondering where we are and what's been going on. Well, folks, that's right. We're back. So please join us 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday on SHR Media, on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and Facebook Live at 11 a.m. on Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM at Facebook. You don't want to miss a minute. We've got lots of guests, lots of segments, and lots of interesting things. And let's face it, there's nowhere for you to go, so you might as well tune in. Again, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. We're back live on the air on SHR Media, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday, audio and Facebook Live, audio and video. Yes, we are going to do video. Facebook Live, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Hope to see you soon.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And we're back. I'm back. He, she, and it are back. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm actually going to remember this time. If you're on Spreaker, hit share on Spreaker. Please share it in a disseminating fashion. YouTube is not functioning tonight. Don't share on YouTube. Still got to figure that out. What the hell quota is. I'm over quota. So I'm back on Facebook until I can figure the YouTube thing out. So share on Facebook, if you will. And I'm on Periscope. If, I think that's PSP, I can't remember what Periscope is. PSP.com, something like that. In any event, we're talking, this is about, most of the show tonight is about the election. This is a trucker who, before the break, was telling you, something is rotten here. Something stinks. And Sergeant Booker in chat got it. The U.S. Postal Service that this guy never deals with, that supervisor, wouldn't leave a paper trail. Then, before the break, this guy that you're going to hear says, so I go back to work the next day and my trailer is gone. Gone.
So that trailer I really liked, okay? What happened on October 21st was a series of unusual events that cannot be a coincidence. I know I saw ballots with return addresses filled out, thousands of them, thousands, loaded onto my trailer in New York and headed for Pennsylvania. At first, I didn't think it was a big deal. In fact, I thought it was really awesome. I really did. I was like, sweet, I'm doing something for the presidential race. You know, this is cool.
Always a Trumpster.
But as things became weirder, I got to thinking and wondered why I was driving complete ballots from New York to Pennsylvania. I didn't know why, so I decided to speak up. And that's what I'm doing today. Thank you.
So that's one of many people talking about what they saw right in front of their faces and what happened. Now, I find it interesting that Tom Fitton at Judicial Watch, who I've thrown some cash to now and then, just to let you know, Tom Fitton made an interesting tweet today regarding Barr. And he said, the Barr DOJ is protecting Hillary Clinton directly and trying to shut down all of Judicial Watch. Clinton email discovery and suits. He's holding up the release of Obamagate emails and texts of Page, Stroke, McCabe. Outrageous. At Real Donald Trump, President Trump should issue an emergency transparency order. On the heels of that, and Barr, according to AP, saying that he's found, this is the American Media Maggots saying that Barr said that there's no voter fraud. Then Barr came back and said, no, that's not what I said. What I said is, I don't see it yet. I'm open to it now or in the future. Then the other thing that occurred that we just discovered that actually occurred, this I find very interesting. This stuff is so Byzantine. It's Machiavellian, literally. 2 weeks, we discover, AP's came out with an article yesterday. We discovered that 2 weeks before the election, Attorney General William Barr appoints Durham from North Carolina as special counsel in the Russia probe investigation. So what that does is that gives extra protection to the prosecutor, to John Durham, to investigate the origins of the Trump-Russia probe, and theoretically that translates and transforms over into the next administration, because now, with a special counsel, it's going to be politically more difficult to screw with that investigation. So make of these things as you will. I just want to bring them to your attention. And I mentioned also earlier, the Supreme Court ruled against Governor Cuomo's coronavirus limits. And as I indicated, who made the key role in that? That was a 5-4 decision. The fifth, until the installation of Amy Coney Barrett, it would have been 4-4. In a 4-4 decision, what that means is if it splits down the middle while they're waiting for a ninth, then it goes back to the originating court. Didn't go back to the originating court. Amy Coney Barrett made the decision. She was the game changer in that decision. So just before midnight of that night, it was the night before Thanksgiving and all through the House, the Supreme Court was stirring and blocked a louse. That was New York Governor Andrew Cuomo from enforcing attendance limits at religious services. The vote was 5-4. This was interesting. Now, you know that all the leftists on SCOTUS they're going to go against that. They're going to side with Cuomo. Who else sided with the leftist jurists? Oh, that's right, John Roberts. So I just wanted to mention that as well. This was a minute and a half of a very interesting revelation. This was back when a couple of days ago, when the Pennsylvania state legislature held a hearing on election issues and irregularities. If you didn't hear this, this is another cut. This is about a minute and a half, I think. Much less than the trucker. But Listen to what they
So
say.
at the very beginning of the chart, where there's a circle, it says on election day. What that indicates is there is a spike in loaded votes, 337,000 plus or minus of some votes that were added in there in one big batch. So that was an anomaly in the reporting. Normally, you would expect to see a smooth curve going up, not any big spikes. That's kind of what Greg was talking about, the anomalies of loading and uploading those votes. So that big spike that occurs there is a prime indicator of fraudulent voting.
And that's 604,000 votes in 90 minutes, is that right?
Correct. This is 337 votes, 337,000 votes in that
in that period of time.
Yes.
And when you look at this entire curve with all these spikes, can you calculate how much of a vote that accounted for Biden and how much for Trump?
Listen to
Close
this.
to 600,000. I think our figures were about 570 some odd thousand that all those spikes represent over time.
For Biden?
Correct.
And how much for Trump?
I think it was a little over 3,200.
Because that's normal, isn't it? Curiouser and curiouser. Now, we get to yesterday. These are again the hearings in Phoenix, Arizona. And the Arizona legislators were there, along with Giuliani as well. This is interesting.
We've been warned for 20 years that going to major mail-in ballots as a way of doing our elections will be fraught with tremendous fraud. They're very dangerous. It's almost impossible for even semi-crooked politicians to resist the temptation to use it for ballot stuffing. We were warned by President Jimmy Carter. We were warned by former Secretary of State Jim Baker in a report, very, very consequential report. They said we should never do it. And if we do it, it should be extremely limited to the real absentee situations like we have done in the past. We were warned by Justice Souter in the Supreme Court, warned by many, many experts, Republican and Democrat. Democrats used to be against mail-in ballots.
Yes.
Like they were against everything else until President Trump was for it.
Bingo.
Which gives you a sense they're not thinking about the country. The key fraud is the mail-in ballot. That was the backup in case they fell too far behind. That's why they cut off the vote at midnight, 1 o'clock, when President Trump was getting too far ahead, particularly in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and also in Pennsylvania. So they cut off the vote. He was getting up to 800,000 in Pennsylvania, 300,000 in Michigan. He was even further ahead in Wisconsin. They cut off the vote. They turned things off. They chased everybody out. And then it's not your concern, except for the fact that you got to look at this somewhat in total. They started bringing in false ballots.
Okay, stop right there. This is the biggest issue that I have with this, and all cops know this. When you investigate a case, when you're sent to a call, when you're a detective and you're issued a particular case for whatever penal code violation there may be, you're looking for patterns and trends, because nothing can be considered by itself in a vacuum. That's not a trend. That's not a multiplier of evidence. One thing in and of itself doesn't mean much of anything. You have to back up and consider the totality of it all. That's another reason that I'm doing the voter fraud show, is because this isn't what the American Media Maggots know, but they're not going to tell you or reveal to you, is that they recognize that too. It is the totality of the circumstances, which is why they cannot tolerate all of these things being mentioned again and again and again, and they're all separate. Nothing occurs in a vacuum.
We have 3 witnesses to 100,000 of those ballots being brought in at 4:30 in the morning in Detroit with no Republicans around that they knew of. Luckily, we had 2 that stayed behind and a Dominion employee who was willing to be honest. Not all of them are honest. And I'm going to ask you to fight. And I'm going to ask you to try to implore the other members of your legislature to stand up to this. Do not be bullied. Do not be frightened. Your political career is worth losing if you can save the right to vote in America. In fact, I may get you a... In fact, I can get you a...
Stop right there. Stop right there. Consider what the Democrats are doing for themselves and screwing over America. They're making the rest of Americans feel that they have no confidence in the voting system. So what does that engender? What that means is, after a while, people are going to say something similar to, fuck it. Why am I voting? And then you'll have the Democrats do whatever they want with impunity, with nothing to stop them whatsoever.
Chapter in Profiles in Courage if you do that. Because at times in our history, certain men and women have stepped forward and lost their political career to give us the rights that we have.
We are going to ask you as legislators to reclaim that authority and to make sure that the people of Arizona and indeed the people of the United States of America as a whole are not disenfranchised by corruption.
This was the whole thing about the hearing in Arizona. That's the point right there.
Federalist 68, Alexander Hamilton talks about the method of choosing our chief magistrate, our president of the United States, and that this safeguard of vesting that authority exclusively with the state legislatures is the safeguard to making sure that corruption does not win. And when the vote of the people and the voice of the people is corrupted through influence, through fraud, then it is the responsibility, the duty, and the obligation, not just the choice, but the actual duty and obligation of the legislature to step in and to make sure that you don't certify false results. You are the last step to make sure that this election is not corrupted. And again, we aren't asking you to step in and overturn an election. We are asking you to step in to make sure that the corruption that occurred here does not stand.
Okay, stop. That reminds me of this. When you hear people say, we need a recount, in my opinion, all the bells and whistles and klaxons ought to be going off in your brainulus. Fuck that. You don't need a recount. You need an audit. Major difference.
So my vote is only as good as the integrity of Dominion and all the hackers that exist that can get into the Dominion machine.
Your vote is not as secure as your Venmo account.
Pardon me? Say that one more time.
Your vote is not as secure as your Venmo account.
Can you think of any reason why anyone would hire them to count votes in the United States?
Stop right there. Do you remember how many times the state of Texas refused to accept Dominion? That's called a hint.
I could postulate a lot of...
Are any of them good reasons?
They have a strong lobby. They work with the government. They work with state government agencies, and they've got the infrastructure to sell their services.
That's it. That's it. Sergeant Booker was right, and that guy's right. And that's the reason for all of this. Now, here's another bit of testimony. This is about a minute or so. This is an expert witness who came to Arizona and said that he thinks the numbers in Arizona are fraudulent based on the data. And what he essentially said is, I think I'd rather resign than certify all of those results. Oh, my God, someone with scruples.
In the simplest way possible, as an expert, what is your opinion as to the validity of the numbers that were certified today by the Secretary of State and the governor?
So you realize, of course, that yesterday Arizona certified the voting results.
About this election.
If I was an executive at a publicly traded company,
I would never sign that because I risked jail time and having all my money taken from me in lawsuits. So to answer your question, I would never, ever have certified. I'd rather resign than have certified those results.
So your professional opinion is that the numbers are fraudulent?
I believe they're fraudulent based on the data. And my sister asked me a simple question this morning. She goes, how sure are you? And my sister's a pretty stubborn person like me. And I said, I'd be willing to put my life on it. I'm that sure about the analysis, assuming that the data that I got from the state and everything else was accurate. So, if you're giving me all inaccurate data from everywhere, then, that's my only caveat.
But wait. It just keeps getting better and better. Remember, I said you cannot take any of this information by itself, singly. You listen and suck up all the information that you have that is offered to you. Are you willing to say, this is a guy, Colonel Waldron, are you willing to say under oath that you've seen, people made a big deal out of this, there's no these voting machines are never hooked up to the internet. Are you willing to say under oath that you have actually seen the connection to the internet, that you've seen it go offshore to Frankfurt, Germany? And he says, yeah. Well, what did he say?
When we're talking about, it was Mr. Krebs? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. He stated the most secure election in history. He stated we're not connected to the internet. He stated no votes leave this country. This is all things he's stated publicly.
So on the CISA website, correct?
Right. So are you willing to say under oath that you have seen the connection to the internet? You have seen it go offshore to Germany, Frankfurt. Are these things that you have personally seen and can say that is not true?
Our white hat hackers, yes, they have that traffic in the packets.
So why would he make that kind of comment, do you think?
Either not knowing, believing the myth, or not wanting the truth to be known.
Thank you.
Senator Borelli.
There you go. This is all purposeful, but it's not one thing in isolation. It's never one thing in isolation. So here's another bit. This is about a minute and a half long.
My only concern is the handling of the ballots, which makes them ineligible to go through the machine correctly.
And again, this is from Phoenix, Arizona. Yesterday.
But it's the room before me and the room after me it's a concern. I don't get to see.
Well, let me ask you about that. So a certain number of ballots were now put aside as duplicates.
Yes.
Duplicates means that they had a problem.
Yes, that they have to be duplicated.
Right.
So
it didn't mean there were two ballots.
Right. That's what
Duplicates
they called
can
them.
sound like two ballots. What
Right.
it meant was there's something wrong with it, and therefore we may have to duplicate it.
Yes, and that's the room that I was originally
And they were put aside.
put aside,
And they
taken
were brought
out.
into another room, and you were not allowed to go in there.
No, I was not allowed to go back there.
So you were cut off from that also.
Yes, I was specifically
You were cut off from
taken out.
observing the problem ballots.
Yes, I was specifically taken out of that room, ushered out, and brought into this room, which really was just the room, as I explained.
And how many could you estimate that is?
Each table would have an average of, let's see, I would say maybe 1/16 of the pile. So, let's say an average of maybe 10 to 20 ballots. But by the time I left, these bins were filled. They would fill them, they would go correct them or whatever it is that they did, and brought them back.
Best estimate.
I would say my guess would be close to the day that I was there, just in 5 hours, maybe 2,000 ballots.
Okay.
That's just in one place, by one person, in one state, in one area on this election. Now, the other person that was there besides Rudy Giuliani in Arizona was Jenna Ellis. And this is what happened when they were closing the hearings in Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a long day.
It was it was almost a 12-hour day.
This day started a month ago. When we knew what was coming, we knew that there was a tidal wave. Some of us have been planning for this as long as 3 months ago. Because we saw what was coming, we prepared our legal briefs, we've done everything we could do to prepare for a flood, a tidal wave. I want to thank the mayor.
Okay, let me make something very important clear to you. The Trump administration, Republicans, etc., were prepared in some fashion a minimum of a month ago for a process just like this. There was the Transition Integrity Project by the Democrats that indicated that these are the various options that we believe will occur if Trump goes, if he doesn't go, what'll we do, what's our option? It's wargaming. These guys knew about that. I read it to you on the show. So I want to emphasize, these people, a good percentile of them, were ready for this. Keep that in mind as the machine churns down the road.
Jenna Ellis, Commissioner Carrick, Catherine Freese, Colonel Waldron, if it wasn't for you, we'd be dead in the water. Indeed.
So this is a bunch of people who have just gotten through a 12-hour day in one place, and this is what it takes to keep America free. If we lose confidence in the elections, then that's essentially carte blanche given to the Democrats, leftists, and the American Media Maggots, Antifa, BLM, socialist, communists, authoritarians, you know the entire list, to do as they will with this country. Because to me and to you, it should be abundantly clear that they couldn't give a crap less about the Constitution of the United States. And they couldn't care less about the Bill of Rights. And that should be so brain-glazingly clear to everyone. Now, this next bit is 19 minutes long, and I want to play the whole thing, and there's a reason for doing it. This next audio selection came from today in Michigan. I almost guarantee you haven't heard this. This is massively huge, important testimony in front of the Michigan Senate Committee on Oversight. This is a Dominion contractor talking to people in Michigan. And with about a 90 percentile or a 99 percentile, my guess is you haven't heard that. You haven't heard this, and there's a reason for that. I'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
It is he that is me, bringing perspective from across the sea. Join me, Jack Alexander, 4 days a week for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the news and issues affecting life and liberty here in the USA. I'll show you what the mainstream media refuses to. politics, border security, defence, healthcare, travel. Nothing is off limits. Catch the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast each Monday to Thursday on Facebook, YouTube, and everywhere good podcasts can be found. Also, check out the website www.jackalexanderexperiment.com.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
After 6 years covering terror and corruption, the Unpleasant Blind Guy is making a change. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker and YouTube through SHR Media and on the Western Free Radio Network as I team up with Jeff Mitchell, host of the English Defense League radio show on blogtalkradio.com. Check show pages for airtimes. It's the Unpleasant Blind Guy.
On EDL Radio.
There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here tonight. I greatly appreciate it. We're already into the second hour. I've been playing loads of audio cuts from Arizona. This is now going to be an audio cut from Michigan, where a Dominion voting machine contractor is going to make some revelations. And let's see. Oh, Leslie is in chat. Welcome back to Leslie. Good to see you here. And Alaskan and Jack and Mike and Sergeant Booker and Simone. Oh, my voice is starting to leave me. Anyway, we're going to go back to this, and I wanted to start the break a little early. This is about 19 minutes or so, but I think you're going to find it very revelatory.
Welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee.
Hi,
you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Melissa Carone. I am a resident of Wayne County. I have a background in IT and cybersecurity. I was contracted by PDS staffing to work with Dominion voting systems, assisting with IT at the TCF Center. I started work at 6 a.m. on November 3rd, and I worked until 5 a.m. on November 4th. I returned to work at 10 a.m. November 4th and worked until 2 p.m. November 4th. I was initially supposed to return back to work around 4, but I was told via text through one of the other Dominion workers named Samuel that I wasn't needed, that they were almost finished counting. I wasn't going to mention this, being that it has been mentioned numerous times. I'm going to. I was initially supposed to be working. I was initially supposed to be working at the Department of Elections. That was an order from Dominion Voting Systems. They told me that I would be parking in a parking lot and I would be shuttled in through a shuttle. I called my mother and I told my mother about this, and my mom said, no, absolutely not. You're not doing that. I also had a concern about that because I do have two small young children at home and I needed access to my vehicle. What I witnessed at the TCF Center was complete fraud. The whole 27 hours I was there, there was batches of ballots being ran through the tabulating machines numerous times, being counted 8 to 10 times. I watched this with my own eyes. I was there to assist with IT. These people on night shift, I had 4 people on night shift that I've known. One of them I've known for over 20 years. He approached me and said he had absolutely zero training whatsoever, contradicting 100% what Daniel Baxter claims, that they had so much training. He said they had zero. I watched. These people had no idea what they were doing. Okay. Also, the adjudication process, I witnessed numerous people walking up, claiming they were both Democrats, saying they were sitting together, judging ballots all night together, all day together. I witnessed it all. I was on the main stage with all of the city officials. Daniel Baxter was in on the whole thing, and I am under the impression 100% that at least 90% of those workers were all in on this. There was not a single ballot the whole night, the whole 27 hours I was there, that I saw that was for Donald Trump. Not one. Not a single ballot. That is scary. There is no reason for that.
Statistically, how could that occur?
I'm going to say that there was something going on at that Department of Elections, and it's clearly something that's very illegal that occurred there, and I am grateful to God that I did not go there.
Thank you. So, Vice Chair Lucido has a question.
Sure.
You were employed by whom to do what?
Okay, so I am a freelance IT worker.
Okay.
I was employed by PDS, P as in Paul, D as in David, S as in Sam, staffing, to assist with IT work for Dominion. At
the software company.
Dominion Voting Systems, correct. I was with Nick Atanamagos. He's my manager.
I apologize, but this is very... Why did they feel that they needed to have assistance there for the software?
So a couple people have asked me the same question. I cannot answer that. These people were very secretive, and I will say that these people were very, very secretive and just really pushy. Never did I ever admit I was a Republican to these people. The comments that they were making were disgusting.
Regardless of Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green, doesn't matter. I'm getting right to the heart of it. What was the instated purpose that the software company needed to have the assistance of support staff for IT?
I believe that it was because Nick and Samuel, that are permanent employees of Dominion, Nick is a part owner, that they had to be together on the stage working together, so it looked like they had assistance with IT. Now, I was also not allowed to wear a badge or tell anybody who I was working with.
That's fine. So your opinion that it was them that needed to be there, you don't know anything that was contractual, you don't know...
By the way, this guy is Senator Peter Lucido. He's Vice Chair, Michigan, Republican, 8th District, in the Shelby Township in Michigan.
If there was anything that was going glitchy, which means that there was...
I know of a lot of stuff that...
But my question is, factually, which means today, as you sit here, is there anything you can tell us that was happening with the software where Nick and Samuel had to go assist in this?
Absolutely.
What was that?
Okay, so Samuel was missing for about 3 hours. When he returned, I said, "Where were you?" He said, "I was at the warehouse." I said, "Where's this warehouse?" And I said, "Is it an Amazon warehouse? I don't know. What kind of warehouse is it, right?" And he said, "We call it the Chicago warehouse." And I said, "Okay, so it's in Chicago?" Because they're from Colorado. I said, "So it's in Chicago?" And he said, "No, Melissa, it's in Detroit. We call it the Chicago warehouse." I said, "Okay," and I just walked away. But there was something very secretive that he was doing. There was also a big data loss right before they sent Samuel to this warehouse.
What time was that?
That was when Samuel went to the warehouse. That was approximately, it was in the afternoon. I believe it was around 2 or 3.
Is that on the 3rd or the 4th?
The 3rd.
Thank you. I'm okay. You have written testimony for the chair?
I have my second
committee?
affidavit, and I have what I was speaking off of just now.
Could you send that to us, please?
Absolutely.
Include your phone number if you could, in case we have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Before you go, please,
Sure.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
When you testify about ballots being counted multiple times, what are you basing that analysis that they were counted multiple times?
Okay. So, I'm sorry. So the tabulating machines, when a ballot jams, it puts up an error. It'll say discard or recount. So when it puts up that error, when a jam occurs, the correct way to go about it is to discard the whole batch, take the ones that have already been tabulated, put them back into a pile, put the one that jammed on top, and then discard the whole thing, and then rescan them. They were not discarding. So they were just rescanning, counting ballots 8 to 10 times, just recounting them. They had absolutely no idea what they were doing.
So you're saying that they were literally opening up the box, taking the ballots back out of the box, and then sending them through again?
No. They
Okay.
were just taking. So
I want to
when
be clear
a ballot,
on this.
okay. So when a ballot was, when the error came up on the PC in front of them, and it said that a jam occurred, I would go try, because it happened so many times in a 27-hour period. Each machine, it did it between 2 and 3 times an hour. So, because these were folded back.
Do you see a problem with any of that right now? Because everyone is telling us there's no voter fraud. What voter fraud?
Ballots. They're mail-in ballots. So when it occurred, and then it threw up the error, discard, rescan, as I just stated, you are supposed to take the problem ballot that got jammed, put it on top of the whole pile, discard it, because that's why the option is there. If you do not discard it, it is recounting it. So they would take the ones that were, say ballot number 25 had an issue. You had already went through 24 ballots. So you're going to put them back all in a pile, and you're just going to rescan it. So it's counting those 24 again, instead of discarding those 24 and restarting.
Do you see what she's saying here? This is critical.
Oh, but that's what I was trying to ask. So they're literally taking.
Did I answer correctly?
You're saying that they're taking ballots that already went through the machine, taking them and scanning them a second time.
That's absolutely what I said. Yes.
So help me understand, because I haven't worked in AV counting center. I've been to my precinct, and when our ballots go into the tabulator, there's no access to them after they're accepted. They go into a sealed box. There's no access
these ones,
to them.
no, I've heard that too from other states, that they do drop directly into a steel box. No, the steel boxes were behind them, which I could say a lot about that too, but I won't. But they were using those for barriers for the poll watchers, so they couldn't get close, the steel boxes.
Imagine
but no, they
that.
were 100% in the counter's hands. This whole process, they were allowed to do whatever they wanted to do. Nick, and Samuel that worked for Dominion, they were on the stage. They had a contract employee, me, and another one that was from Texas. I have his name right here, Miles Smiley, 90-year-old man there to assist with IT work. He did not have any kind of background in IT and worked and lived in Tennessee. So this man was just walking around aimlessly. I was really the only one running around like crazy helping these people.
Thank you for that clarification. I was not aware that it.
No, and they were
the machines
responsible.
The machines I've been exposed to don't work that same way, so I was just checking in on that. Senator Tice.
So I'm trying to figure out the whole line of everything here. So you were with the equipment and the tech.
Okay, you understand what's going on here. What she just said and testified to, because she was there and watched it happen, is so brazen that people are attempting to say now, okay, am I really understanding what she said?
Themselves?
Correct.
And they were going to send you to the Department of Elections?
Initially, that is where I was scheduled.
Tabulators at the Department of Elections?
That's the main question here, huh? because I was trained on the tabulation and adjudication process, and how many people just came up before me stating that they saw people walking in and out of that Department of Elections with. As I stated, I was not supposed to even talk about this today,
And
but
then
I'm going
as
to.
they're scanning, they have a pile of them. They're putting them through a scanner, and the pile, once it's gone through the scanner, is still fully accessible to the person
Absolutely.
who's doing the count.
Absolutely.
Okay.
50 times if they wanted to.
Any other members have a question?
Let that sink in.
Senator Lucido?
Yeah,
Senator,
this is interesting. You were trained to oversee tabulators. Is that what you told?
I was trained to assist with IT
In tabulators.
and the adjudication process, correct, sir?
Who trained you to use
Dominion.
your technique on the tabulators as it relates?
Dominion.
Dominion did. Was it their representatives that came to the TCF Center?
It was the owner of Dominion, Nick Economagnis, that came to the TCF Center, which is insane because he's like the top of the top with Dominion, which is he's missing.
When
He's
did
gone.
you meet with them at the TCF Center to get your training?
Okay, so my training was in Allen Park at the hotel they were staying at, right off of. It was November 2nd for 1 hour.
The day before the elections?
November 2nd, correct.
The day
sir.
before the election?
Yes, sir.
1 hour training. Was it done by?
Alex?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as long as we get her testimony, I would be.
And the owner of Dominion was there.
Intrigued.
Why?
To look at whatever you have.
Absolutely.
Through the chair.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank
Hold on. I have another question for you, ma'am. Please. Vice Chair Irwin has a question. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. If I were to take a ballot, an absentee ballot, and I were to run that through a machine multiple times, and that ballot were to be counted multiple times, is that machine going to reflect those votes in the vote total at the end of the day? And is that ballot going to be recorded in the poll book 8 times or something? I mean, what's the...
Why do you think the poll books were so off?
Well, they were off a little bit less than they were in previous elections. So unless your allegation is that...
They were off 100%.
Excuse me, members of the audience, please respect the
Sorry. I mean,
the-
you
the
asked me a
witness
question.
and-
What do you expect the answer to
I
be?
was hoping for an answer, but I don't think I'm going to get one.
Excuse me. I couldn't hear what was going on because too many people talking over each other. So if you could please, Mr.
Sure.
Vice Chair, finish your line of questioning. I'd like to hear the end of it, please.
That was the end of it. There was just one question, which was that, if this were to happen, it would show up in the tabulations being off. And we know...
They were
Do
off.
we know to what extent that they're off?
They were off.
Right, yeah, we know that.
So why are you asking? What are you asking me?
I'm trying to ask you if
Sir,
someone were to...
Go ahead.
If someone were to go and run the same ballot
Mhm.
over and over and over again, that would end up showing up as a massive discrepancy, right?
Did
and we've added up the
somebody took a
discrepancies.
ballot and ran it over and over and over again?
You
Just
did-
one ballot? Or a batch of 50?
Either way, I mean, the batch of 50 is going to be even
If you
more.
take one and you run it over and over and over again, yeah, people are going to notice that one has been ran over and over. I had numerous challengers come up to me and say, "What's going on here?" One guy got thrown out because he took a picture of me.
Sure, I'm just wondering why the numbers at the end of the day aren't matching up with the stories that we're hearing. I'm trying to square that circle. And
By the way, if you didn't know, if you couldn't guess, this is Senator Jeff Irwin. He's a Democrat. Imagine that.
I know there's going to be an
Your
investigation
question
of
is
all of
as good
these
as everybody
allegations.
else's in here.
Yeah, there's
Why
going to be an
isn't it
investigation
why
of all
isn't it
this, and we're
matching
going to look
up?
into all
It's
these
not
details.
matching up. Everything that happened at that TCF Center was fraud. Every single thing. Every avenue was
Excuse me.
taken to commit it.
Please. Appreciate your passion, but he feels his
Yeah, but don't let the passion get confused by the facts.
question was answered. Appreciate that. I do have one additional follow-up.
Sure.
You mentioned observing ballots arriving
Yes, sir.
late. Do you have knowledge of where they came from?
I cannot say that for 100%. I do not know 100%.
Okay.
Do I assume where they came from? Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator McDonald, thank you.
I'll be brief. Your testimony was very compelling. So I just want to go back to what I asked Senator Colbeck. Where is the Department of Justice in this? I mean, without arresting it, I mean, are they even looking into it? I mean, your testimony is unbelievably compelling. So I'm just wondering, where are they?
Okay. Your question is as good as mine. So I did call the FBI on November 5th, and
Okay.
I spoke with a woman for at least 40 minutes. The phone disconnected. She had all my information. She never called me back. I had to call them
The phone disconnected. She never called me back.
I haven't been contacted back since.
You would
Gee, does that sound a little bit like Flight 800?
think that, did you contact anybody from the Trump campaign?
Oh, yeah. I've been
Wouldn't they
talking-
have a pipeline to the Department of Justice? Well, I mean,
I've been talking to attorneys. What I said just now regarding the Department of Elections and how I was scheduled to work there, that is coming out. That is coming out. That will be coming out next week. There's a lot coming. I was not even supposed to talk about that, but a lot of people mentioned it. So you know what? I'm going to tell you guys about it because this is fraud.
Okay.
And there was fraudulent activity occurring there.
thank you. Your testimony was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, did you hear any of that anywhere in the media? In the meantime, the media is saying in one massive central unison type voice, there is no widespread voter. Remember, it went from there is no voter fraud to there is no widespread voter fraud. Widespread across the nation. Well, we're only talking about a handful of states, so it doesn't have to involve every state, does it? Because that would be widespread voter fraud. So it doesn't have to involve every state, does it? Just the ones in contestation. Senator Rand Paul then also, today I believe, said that there is statistical fraud in states where Trump lost. And so he got into big tech a little bit. This was Sunday. He said statistical fraud was found in 4 states where Trump lost in the presidential election during supposed data dumps in the middle of the night and early morning. Stop. Have we ever encountered, this is the other thing that you have to consider. What's normal? What's unusual? Have we ever heard of anything like this before? No. What's one of the major reasons for these things happening? Mail-in ballots. Trump's margin of defeat in 4 states occurred in 4 data dumps between 1:34 and 6:31 a.m., Rand Paul said. Statistical anomaly? Fraud? Look at the evidence and decide for yourself. That is, if big tech allows you to do that. So I wonder if it's voter fraud. Well, I'll have a show to do about that. This, what do I got? I got about 35 more minutes. Okay, I can get some more stories in here. This just came out today. I'm going to probably talk about Wuhan 19 a little bit, starting with this. A mayor in Louisville, this is how you pronounce it, Louisville, Kentucky, said he's declaring racism a public health crisis in Kentucky. Racism is a public health crisis in
Mayor
Kentucky.
Fisher's executive order outlines a number of issues where he believes racial inequity exists here in Louisville, but activists say there's one problem he's still not addressing.
We can't change America by ourselves, but we can show America how a city can change itself.
Mayor Greg Fisher responded to calls for racial equity.
Oh, the blue circle of death.
With an executive order Tuesday declaring racism a public health crisis in Louisville.
For too many Louisvillians, racism is a fact of daily life, a fact that was created and documented in our country's laws and institutional policies like segregation, redlining, and urban renewal.
The announcement comes after months of protests over the death of Breonna Taylor and racial inequities stemming from years of discriminatory government policies.
Advancing racial equity in our city strengthens our workforce, improves our tax base, and increases the spending power of our residents.
The order...
So, I'm stopping with that right now, because that's how stupid that is. He's just another gaup, what I call a gaup, a guilty, overeducated white person. Then the other thing that I forgot to mention, I should have mentioned it last week. President Trump pardoned former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. And the leftists went absolutely nuts. They went nuts. Which, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely wonderful. Because what we have right now, let's recap before the bottom of the hour break. This is where we are right now in the various elections. Biden-Harris has 306 electors, or so this is indicated at this point. Trump-Pence, 232. In the Senate, please note, Republicans have 50, Democrats have 48. Now, if they get in Georgia, if Democrats pick up 2 senators in Georgia, the runoff's coming in January, then it will be 50-50, split down the middle. Who's the tiebreaker under a Biden presidency? If Biden-Harris become president, that's right, the vice president, Harris. And they will have control of the Senate. That's why Georgia is so incredibly important. In the House, this was going to be a blue wave, a massive tsunami. Not. Because there's only a 10-seat difference. Democrats in the House, 222. Republicans, 212. Democrats lost 10 seats. Republicans gained 11 seats. In governors, now, Republican governors outweigh Democrat governors. Now, 27 governors are Republican, 23 governors are Democrats. That's an update with that. Let's see. I'm going to take a break. Then I'm going to talk about Fox, because I want you to hear about the person that I love to hate, who I think is a true, honest-to-God douchebag, Neil Cavuto. And I'll tell you why when we come back. This is the last break. If you want to go to the Electric Winkle Chamber, now is the time. I am BZ, the bloviating Zeppelin, and you're in the Saloon. The Saloon, of course, now is a complete autonomous area.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Southern Sense is conservative talk with Annie, the radio chick you ballast as host, and C.S. Bennett co-host. Informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey. Annie is a top conservative host on Top Talk Radio and features some of the finest guests packed with important politicians and newsmakers. Listen every Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, noon to 3 Pacific, on the SHR Media Network. Remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
Hey, are you guys listening? This is Shannon from Right Wave with Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media. I know you've been wondering where we are and what's been going on. Well, folks, that's right, we're back. So please, join us 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday on SHR Media, on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and Facebook Live at 11 a.m. on Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM at Facebook. You don't want to miss a minute. We've got lots of guests, lots of segments, and lots of interesting things. And let's face it, there's nowhere for you to go, so you might as well tune in. Again, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. We're back live on the air on SHR Media, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday, audio and Facebook Live, audio and video. Yes, we are going to do video. Facebook Live, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Hope to see you soon.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And we're back. We're nationwide. I am BZ. You're in the Saloon. My newly declared autonomous zone. And that's the way it will be. If Chaz can do it, I can do it. So we've got another 28 minutes before the end of the show. I want to chat about Fox News just for a moment. I told you before the break that Neil Cavuto is the guy I love to hate. And this occurred in 2019. Do you remember when Notre Dame caught on fire last year? I can't remember the month. But I happened to be watching Fox News. Neil Cavuto came on, and when an individual in France, a resident of the city, who should know because they're talking to someone that's there, he started to say, we've had numerous arsons and fires by Muslims before in this city, and Neil Cavuto cut him off and said, we can't talk about that. As if Neil Cavuto knows for a fact much more than the guy who lives there in France does. Another reason I hate him. Now, Neil Cavuto pulled the same crap with Kayleigh McEnany. And here this is, if it'll spool up.
Illegal votes.
Whoa. I just think we have to be very clear. She's charging, the other side is welcoming fraud and welcoming illegal voting. Unless she has more details to back that up, I can't in good countenance continue showing you this. I want to make sure that maybe they do have something to back that up.
Okay, that's a presser. She's not talking to him directly. Kayleigh McEnany is making a statement at the White House that Neil Cavuto cuts from.
But that's an explosive charge to make, that the other side is effectively rigging and cheating. If she does bring proof of that, of course, we'll take you back. So far, she has started saying right at the outset.
So, in the world of Cavuto, and now in the world of Fox, you can't make statements that aren't pre-approved. Speaking of Fox, and I have enjoyed Fox for many, many years. I didn't want this to happen. I had to do it with the NFL. I had to do it with American sports. I don't want to listen to their bullshit, so I cut them off. If you're not even willing to be fair and listen to people. And I did the same thing, like I said, with all American sports. I was driven out of American sports, and now that same thing is occurring with Fox News. At least people whose motto was, we report, you decide, they're not reporting. Fox News, except for a handful of people, is primarily dead. Now, CNN Business came out with this, and I'm sure you've heard what Fox has been doing, and the people that I listen to anymore are all in the evening. Tucker Carlson, I still like Tucker Carlson. I'll listen to Hannity. I'll listen to Laura Ingraham. I like Steve Hilton a lot. Judge Jeanine She's already been excised from Fox. And who else am I missing? Oh, Mark Levin, who on his show will go into great detail. See, I have the ability on my show to go into great detail, and either you listen to me or you don't. But my job, I feel, here is to provide as much information as I can so that you can decide. I tell you it's all my opinion because that's what I do. I'm not a journalist. However, these days I'm every bit as much of a journalist as journalists. Here's a story from CNN Business. This is what Fox is doing now. Fox News staffers thought Newsmax was a joke, but they're not laughing anymore. Fox News is taking action to stave off newfound competition from Newsmax TV. Well, and OANN too. Now, I can get Newsmax on Dish and OAN, One America News. I think somebody said it's on DirecTV. I can't get it on Dish. So if I can't do it there, then it must be available on the internet. So maybe you guys can tell me, I don't know. The two big providers are Dish or DirecTV. Is OAN on DirecTV? Because I have no idea. Producers on some Fox programs have been told to monitor Newsmax's guest bookings and throw some sand in Newsmax's gears by encouraging guests who appear on on both channels to stop saying yes to the upstart. According to Fox sources, producers were told to avoid some regular guests if they kept showing up on Newsmax after being encouraged to stop. Management's goal to remind guests who's boss. So who did I see on Newsmax today, early this morning? I saw Gordon Chang. Gordon Chang is one of the most insightful columnists and commentators on China, for obvious reasons, because that's his history. That's what he's good at. He's written books, highly educated, but he made the mistake of being on Newsmax today. So now I'm going to be really interested to see if perhaps we don't see Gordon Chang anymore. And then what happens if we don't see other people anymore? This could be one of the worst things, one of the worst decisions that Fox has ever made. And I'll tell you what, I had to do this with the NFL, and I'll do it with Fox. If you want to shoot yourself in the head, go ahead. I don't need you. Fox is discretionary. I'll watch who I like to watch, and the rest of these assholes on Fox can all go to hell. I know that there won't be commentators and talking heads that I don't like every time. This is one of them that I do like. This is Tucker Carlson talking with Dr. Robert Epstein. Now, I played the cut before where in 2019, Robert Epstein said, Google can do any damn thing it wants. And with the touch of a finger, it can turn elections upside down. Well, Tucker Carlson had Dr. Robert Epstein, who is a leftist, who is a registered Democrat, back on the air. And this is what Epstein said. If I turn on the volume, okay, let me turn on the volume. Let me stop it. And let me go again.
What he's found. Doctor, thanks so much for coming on. What effect do you think, have you measured, of big tech on the voting outcome this month?
Well, a couple of things that we've looked at so far. First of all, we had 733 field agents in 3 key swing states this year, Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida. And we preserved more than 500,000 ephemeral experiences. That's a lot. That's about 30 times more data than we got in 2016. And we're finding a couple of things that are pretty clear. Number one is that Google's search results were strongly biased in favor of liberals and Democrats. This was not true on Bing or Yahoo. The bias was being shown to pretty much every demographic group we looked at, including conservatives. So in fact, conservatives got slightly more liberal bias in their search results than liberals did. How do you account for that? And then we also found what seems to be a smoking gun. That is, we found a period of days when the vote reminder on Google's homepage was being sent only to liberals. Not one of our conservative field agents received a vote reminder during those days. The good news is, on that fourth day that we were monitoring, we went public with some of our findings, and Google backed off. They literally shut off that manipulation that night, and so for 4 days before the election, they were showing vote reminders to everyone, finally.
What effect, and we're thankful that you are apparently the only person monitoring this. It controls our Google single-handedly controls our view of the world, and yet no one seems to care. But what do you imagine the effect, what have you measured the effect of this manipulation had on the outcome of the election?
Listen to this.
Well, there are multiple manipulations here. We were also monitoring YouTube this time, and Facebook, and Bing, and Yahoo. The bottom line at the moment is that these manipulations, the ones that we've so far quantified, could easily have shifted at least 6 million votes in just one direction. That's the bare minimum at this point that I'm confident of.
Google shifted at least, Dr. Robert Epstein says, at least 6 million votes.
Maximum, we haven't even begun to estimate that yet because we have so much data to look at.
So that's the margin of the election right there. So you're saying that what you feared could happen may indeed have happened, that the manipulations from one company, Google, may have determined the outcome of the presidential election.
Well, we've been told this for nearly a year by whistleblowers from Google. We've seen it in leaked documents from Google, leaked videos from Google. There's no question that they set about after the 2016 election to make sure that President Trump, whom I do not support, by the way, to make sure that he is not reelected. And the massive amount of data we've collected is...
Okay, see, now that's why when you look into the background of this guy, Epstein, that's how I know that this guy is primarily, I'll wager, telling me the truth. Because he is a registered Democrat. You can find that out. You can look into his background and see that he's a leftist. And all this statistical crap pisses him off, too. But he's ethical enough to tell us he holds no sway with that. He will not support it, and in fact, he's talking against it.
Consistent with what the whistleblowers and leaks have been telling us for a long time now. So yes, the answer is yes.
So
yes.
Why is this not at the top of the concern of anybody who cares about democracy? Why are we allowing this to happen?
Leftists, Democrats, and the American Media Maggots, I'll say it again, don't care about democracy. You proles, you serfs, you groundlings, you rabble, you unwashed commoners, you serfs, you can go to hell.
Do you think?
Unfortunately, the answer is pretty obvious. Google literally buys candidates and politicians, and
thank you.
And my colleagues, my fellow academics, are often bought by Google with large grants. So, the fact is that if you're a Democrat or you're a liberal, you like what Google and to some extent these other tech companies are doing. You like it. It's to your advantage. The problem, though, is that we don't know who Google is going to be supporting tomorrow. And in fact, in different countries around the world, they don't necessarily support liberals. In some countries, they support conservatives. In China, they've worked with the Chinese government to help surveil and control the Chinese population.
This is the story right here. Dr. Epstein, I hope that you get the funding that you need to continue this research. I think it's hard to think of many things more important, and I hope that changes are made immediately. Or this is
well, we've moved
Great
into Georgia, so we're now monitoring the Georgia runoff. So we're doing our best.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
There you go. He's moving into Georgia. This is a leftist guy who doesn't mind telling you that he wants things clear. He wants things transparent. He knows this is wrong. And so he's talking about it. For the next couple of minutes, I'd like to go just kind of gloss over some of the things that occurred in the election in leftist areas. On November 3rd, on the left coast in California, always spell it with a K, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, San Francisco voters approved a measure that would allow the city of San Francisco to eliminate police. San Francisco voted to do away with minimum staffing requirements for the city's police department. Under the city charter, originally, SFPD was mandated to maintain at least 1,900, almost 1,200, almost 2,000 sworn full-time law enforcement officers. Proposition E passed. Supervisor Norman Yee wrote that bad boy, and that abolished the mandatory minimum staffing. So SFPD is going to have to submit a staffing report to the police commission once every 2 years, and that'll be used to determine how many positions the department will have. So if they want to have nothing, they can have nothing. Our response times to 911 calls are lagging because we don't have enough people on patrol. SFPOA Vice President Sergeant Tracy McRae recently told the San Francisco Chronicle, imagine that. The clarion call is going to have to be from now and in the future, if you voted for this shit, you're going to have to live with this shit. Here's something else that happened. Now, this occurred in Washington, the state of Washington. Leftists have already said in California that they are floating the idea of removing sheriffs from elections. They want them to be appointed because if you're appointed, you're answerable to the appointing party. Well, California, spell it with a K, has only floated this idea. Washington is now starting that idea. So now the King County Sheriff is going to be appointed, not elected, under an approved measure. This could create a massive constitutional issue. That measure would make the position of sheriff an appointed one, and the other measure that was passed is going to change some of the responsibilities of the sheriff. They approved both of those. Charter Amendment 5 changes the role of sheriff from being an elected position to an appointed position. It has been an elected position since 1996. So the change would allow the county executive to appoint the sheriff with approval from the King County Council. That's going to be the only county in the state to have an appointed sheriff. But where is King County? Oh, that's right. Leftist Central. That passed. Oh, and this passed too while I happen to be in Washington. Seattle just recently, less than a week ago, more than about 2 weeks ago, they cut their police budget, Seattle PD, by 20%. The second greatest percentile in the nation. But still, leftists are pissed off because they wanted 50%. And 20% for leftists, that's not nearly enough. And while we're talking about competency or incompetency, it turns out that newly discovered emails and texts show that Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan and other officials had no clue how to handle that Chop Chaz place. And so there's a guy that's been covering this named Jason Rantz, R-A-N-T-Z, who works for KTTH Radio. had this to say on a Fox show.
Remember protesters this summer taking over parts of Seattle, declaring it the now infamous chop zone, in a move their own mayor welcomed.
We've got 4 blocks in Seattle that you just saw pictures of that is more like a block party atmosphere. I don't know. We could have the summer of love.
Yeah, it's so happy.
But newly released messages from Seattle leaders tell a different story, revealing a situation spiraling out of control. As rioters took over the police station, one email shows fire officials asking for help, saying, quote, East Precinct, they disabled the door lock so they can't be locked. In another text, city council members dismissed the threat, saying, quote, some members say they don't believe there is intel about a threat to the precinct. Here with details, Seattle radio host Jason Rance. Jason, so, these messages are a little disturbing from where I'm sitting, but what do you make of them?
Well, I mean, you're right. It is disturbing. You had city officials who behind the scenes didn't seem to know what was going on and were sending mixed messages to each other about whether or not they were going to abandon this East Precinct. Behind the scenes, they were saying, no, we're not going to under no circumstances. And then,
now, this is just one in a continuing series of stupid things that have been occurring in leftist cities. When this occurred, there were some people that were saying, that were advocating, Trump needs to send in the military or some other force to take Seattle back. And my response to that is, no. Let these people live in crap. Let these people live in crime. Only when more people are killed are some of these leftists going to care. And if that means letting go of Seattle, let go of Seattle. If that means letting go of San Francisco, let go of San Francisco. There have to be consequences for these decisions. Otherwise, where pushback isn't encountered, that only enables these shit sticks. It's got to stop somewhere. There have to be consequences. You voted it. You live in it until you vote somebody else in. Oregon voters. Fuck. What is up with Washington? I mean, even California. Spell it with a K. Even California hasn't done this. Oregon voters decriminalized heroin, methamphetamine, and cocaine. Well, that's going to go well. These people are insane. I don't know how to state it in any other words. They're insane. They're hypocrites. They are authoritarians. And now they don't mind telling you that they are Democrat socialists. Whereas before they would couch their language in other phrases. These days, they don't mind telling you, yeah, I'm a Democrat socialist. Because all these assholes think that and I've said this for years, all these people think that they can do socialism better than the last guy. And they have historical Alzheimer's because it's never worked. And it never will work because it doesn't take human nature into account. Then you have guys like Governor Cuomo. And let me see if I can find this. Because there's so much irony now. If I can find this. Oh, before I go to this cut, here's something else that I bet you guys haven't heard. Now, you know the stats regarding Wuhan 19 are throughout the nation. 40% of the deaths from Wuhan 19 in this nation have been in nursing facilities with the elderly. Cuomo created a mandate shoving hot Wuhan 19 patients into nursing homes. And as I said about Cuomo, one nursing facility death is a tragedy. 11,000 plus nursing home deaths mandated by Cuomo. That's a statistic. Have you heard this? This came out November 22nd, about a week ago. And because it doesn't reflect well on New York, which means it doesn't reflect well on Warren Wilhelm, Mayor Warren Wilhelm, or Cuomo for that. Headline from Daily News. Hundreds of early COVID-19 victims in New York City are still stored in freezer trucks on the Brooklyn waterfront. And here's a picture of all these. You see refrigerated trailers being pulled down the freeway, and on the front of the trailer is a refrigeration unit to keep apples and fruit and produce. Cool. Well, there are, with the Statue of Liberty in the background, there are a host of trailers in this photograph with refrigeration units. That's where the bodies are. The bodies of hundreds of people who died when the coronavirus surged in New York City during the spring, are still in storage in freezer trucks on Brooklyn's waterfront. What the fuck?
The ability to change the sheriff's duties and power. P5 law enforcement analyst Carmen Benz says those changes speak to a larger community focus on how to address. Meet again. Don't know where. Don't know where.
Don't give up. It's a challenging year. I can't wait until 2020 ends. I can't promise that 2021 is going to be any better. But I'm telling you this. People are getting tired of this shit. And now that you're going to have leftists perhaps installed, unless SCOTUS does something in the White House, we can't lose the Senate. But 2022 is just around the corner. And 2024, Trump is already amenable to listening about people soliciting his running again. That's never happened before. But it could. The other thing is, if it's Biden, do you think Trump is going away? I don't. See you next Thursday. God bless. Take care. Be safe.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night.
Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.